All right. Hello, Mr. Brister. Today we have the qualitative biomechanical analysis of the bench press by me, Jarvis Lee. So today we'll be going over the amateur versus professional. The amateur is Tommy Williams. I had to train him for your other class, exercise prescription, for the 6 weeks. So we get him into weightlifting versus professional Maryland strongman. So project description: the biomechanics of the bench press, a new lifter versus a seasoned professional lifter. The project methodology is we have to divide each phase and divide each temporal phase, identify joint movements as specific joints, determine muscle contraction, identify joint angular acceleration, identify extreme joint ranges of motion for safety, and then followed by the qualitative biomechanical analysis and the conclusion. So the temporal phases of the bench press. The bench press involves two phases: the down phase, in which the lifter lowers the barbell to the chest, and the up phase, in which the lifter raises the barbell. The bench press is one of the simpler movements. The end of one phase is the beginning of the next phase, and it's designated by the change in the movement. This is just like a visual, so you can see eccentric on the way down. Concentric is when you push the barbell back up. Here's just a few visuals. So the joint movements are specific joints. In the concentric, which is the lifting phase, the shoulder is being adducted and the elbow is being extended. So shoulder abduction is when you lift your arm out to the side. Elbow extension is when the elbow is extending out. So in the eccentric, which is the lowering phase, the shoulder is being abducted horizontally and the elbow is being flexed. So elbow flexion is when the elbow comes up. Abducting is when you're lowering shoulder back down. So these are joint movements of specific joints. So now let's talk about the muscles being used during the bench press. So the agonist muscles, meaning the main muscles that contract to provide the main force, is the big pectoral major, which is your large chest muscle. Synergist muscle being used is the anterior deltoid, front of the shoulder muscle, tricep brachii, which is the back of the upper arm, tricep brachii, coracobrachialis, small upper arm near the bicep, and the synergists mean muscles that assist the main mover, so they're going to help the large chest muscles move the weight. Now the stabilizer muscles is just keep everything intact and keep everything stable, so that's why your core is very important in the bench press. The abdominals, which I just said, the core, trunk muscles, bicep brachii, front of the upper arm, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, subscapularis, teres minor, which are just rotator cuff muscles that stabilize the shoulder. Now we have the in-depth muscle breakdown during the phase of the bench press. So as you see, we talked about them in the last slide, the pectoralis major, which is the big chest muscle, is used in the bench press. Both the sternal and clavicle heads of the pectoral majors transversely flex the shoulder during the bench press. The pectoralis are used the greatest in the lower portion of the descent phase. So as the bar is coming down, right here, this is where the pectoral major will be used the most. And when you're about to lift it back up. So at that bottom portion, where it's on the way down and on the way back up, that's where you're using that the most. The anterior deltoid, which is the front deltoid, assists in transverse flexion of the shoulder as well as flexion of the shoulders. Particularly when the upper arms are closer to the side of the body, the anterior deltoid are utilized the greatest in the mid position in both the descent and the lifting phase, which means on the way down, like I'm on the bench, on the way down, boom, boom. Once I get to the mid, this is where the anterior deltoid is used the most. And lastly, the triceps, particularly the lateral and medial head, extend the elbow extension during the bench press, they are utilized the greatest in lifting phase as compared to the lowering phase. So as you're lifting, this is when the tricep brachialis will be used the most. Like the pectoralis major, the maximal activity of the triceps occur late in the descent phase and early in the lift phase. This is when at the bottom, on the way down the bottom and on the way up at the bottom. So your tricep will be used the most here. Now let's look at the joint angular accelerations within the bench press. So at the beginning of the down phase, we got the barbell here. At the beginning of the down phase, the barbell accelerates in the downward direction. And that's because of gravity, 9.8 m per second, and the elbow flexion and shoulder horizontal extension occur. Because the force exerted by the lifter is upward at this instant, it is reduced to create the downward acceleration. Less torque is created by the active muscle groups at this instant. At the end of the down phase, boom, the downward movement of the barbell is slowed. So its acceleration is upward. Elbow flexion and shoulder horizontal extension also slow down. The force exerted by the lifter is upward at this instant, so it must be increased to cause the upward acceleration of the barbell. More torque must be created by the active muscle groups, which is the large chest muscles again, at this instant to cause this acceleration. The same is true at the start of the up phase, when the barbell is accelerated upward again. At the end of the up phase though, the barbell is slowed and its acceleration is downward. So the active muscle groups are most stressed at the end of the down phase and at the beginning of the up phase. So for example, if I'm lifting, boom, I'm going down, the most stress is when I'm coming back up to start to press the weight. Now in the bench press, extreme joint range of motion in the bench press. The bench press is pretty safe. The elbow is at full extension at the start of the down phase. So full extension here. And at the end of up phase, boom, full extension again. So this is not an unusual position for the elbow joint. So at the end of the down phase and at the beginning of the up phase, elbow is fully flexed, and the shoulder may be close to the limit of its horizontal extension. This would be the only extreme joint range of motion issue you will run into. The muscular torques are greatest at this position as well, so specific flexibility exercises to stretch the elbow extensors and the shoulder horizontal flexors may be appropriate. Now let's talk about the 4 steps of a qualitative biomechanical analysis. We have description. Description, you have to develop a theoretical model of the most effective technique and describe what it would look like. Determine what you want to see when you observe your athletes. Observation, you have to watch the performance of your athlete to determine what the person's technique looks like. Evaluation, you compare the ideal technique to the observed performance. Identify and evaluate errors. Instruction, educate the athlete by providing feedback and instruction necessary to correct these errors. So let's get into the description of the bench press. The most effective technique will be finding the right bench. The wider the bench is, the safer it is for your shoulders. You have to find the right bar position, which is just below arms fully extended. So it'll be like right here, about here. Now it's time to start benching, of course. Barbell, you want it to shoulder width apart and an overhand grip. You want to keep your feet planted, drive your feet to the floor and clamp your shoulder blades. Breathe in, lowering the bar until it touches your chest. And push up on the way up, you want to exhale, so as you push it up. But you got to focus your mind on the chest muscles and push bar up explosively as you breathe out. So let's look at Tommy's bench press video. This will be the amateur. Okay. It's the first angle, the slow motion. Okay. There's a second angle in slow motion. All right. wants to replay on. Alright, let's move on to the next slide. Now let's watch the ideal technique from Brian Alsria. He's a former Maryland strongman and a fitness coach. So let's see. Got it right here. Okay. Let's look at this. Okay. Core engaged. Feet to the floor. Watch this leg drop. He uses legs to get help, stabilize, and put pressure into that bench. Okay, let's go back to the okay. Now let's get into evaluation. Tommy's video versus the pro lifter. Errors I spotted within Tommy's lift. All of the errors are minor. So Tommy is not in extreme danger of injury within these errors. These fixes will increase the weight he can bench and make everything easier because of the stabilizer. So within the bench press, I've seen Tommy could have used his breath better. If you look, when you looked at the video, there was no inhales, no exhales. He was just pushing the weight. This can help because exhaling when you press the barbell away provides greater stability. When you breathe out, it's easier to engage your core muscles and keep your back pressed against the bench. When you're more stable, it's possible to press more weight, then maximizing your efforts on the bench press. Also, exhaling, firstly, protects your blood vessels from expanding too much and preventing hernias. So second, the added core engagement during exhale protects your spine from arching too much off the bench, which could potentially cause injury. So also, one little detail I seen was the leg drive. When we looked at the pro weightlifter's lift, he used his legs. Legs, feet planted, engaged, driving up. So leg drive in the bench press will help push your traps back into the bench. The more force you put into the bench, the more force you can push up, thus more weight. This allows for greater stability when handling heavier weights, as well as helping keeping thoracic extension on the bench press. A thoracic extension isn't directly created through leg drive, but it's attenuated through it. Okay. Now the instruction, what Tommy can do better, is just work on his breath and work on his leg drive. The breath, inhale as the bar is being lowered. As the bar is being lowered, exhale as he lifts the bar. This provides more stability, which in turn engages his core and keeps his back pressed to the bench. The more your back is pressed to the bench, like I said, the more force you can push up. Leg drive, keep his feet planted on the ground, but engage them, like engage his glutes. This helps push your traps back into the bench and allows greater stability when handling heavier weights. The main purpose of the bench press is to build strength in muscle. This exercise is mainly used to build muscle and increase strength. The bench press is a compound exercise that works your chest and shoulders, as well as your triceps. It's considered one of the best exercises for building muscle and increasing strength, making it an important part of most workouts. Now let's look at how Newton's laws were used within the bench press. The first law is everybody continues in a state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line, unless it's compelled to change the state by forces impressed upon it. So the first law is being used when the lifter lifts the barbell off the rack, and the lifter uses force to get the bar up. Then the next force is the gravitational pull of about -10, falling downwards on the lifter. So gravity is pushing downwards on the lifter as the weight is lowered, and then the lifter must then put force back on gravity and the weight to push the weight off their chest. Now the second law is the change of motion of an object proportional to the force impressed, and is made in the direction of the straight line in which the force is impressed. So like I said earlier, with the leg drive and your core engagement, when we're pushing our glutes, engage our glutes, and we're pushing back against the bench, that's helping us compel the weight up off our chest. Now, Newton's third law: to every action there's always an opposed and equal reaction, or the mutual action of two bodies upon each other are always equal and directed to contrary parts. This is simple when it comes to the bench press. The more force you put down into the bench, the more force will be produced when you push the weight back up. So in conclusion, I really enjoyed this project. I got to analyze and help my friend on a muscle gaining journey. Tommy's trying to gain weight and gain muscle. I also learned a lot about such a simple movement in the bench press. I would have never thought the bench press was this detailed in terms of all the muscles being used and everything that I learned through this biomechanical analysis. Like I said, there's a lot more to simple things that meet the eye. I found a passion in this type of work using the research and all the stuff I found about the simple movement of a bench press. And lastly, here's my works cited. Thank you.